Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry for the delays and the technical difficulties, but such is the world we live in right now. Quick introductions. My name is Brent Cooke. I am with the Kradle team. I work on the marketing and advertising side. Kradle is a CBD brand. It is the only CBD brand that is exclusively built for dogs and exclusively built to address stress and anxiousness in dogs. And that is something that is near and dear to my heart. I have a 110-pound dog de Bordeaux or French Mastiff named Stella, who is a rescue. And she has some pretty severe stress particularly in these days, since she's been spending so much time with me when I go away. She tends to break down a little bit. So I'm a Kradle user myself, and I love my dog. I love Stella, and I definitely want to make sure that she's comfortable. I am joined today by my colleague Lee Mayberry, who I'll let introduce himself here. Lee is also on the Kradle team and really handles everything authoritatively, from regulatory affairs to quality control. But I don't want to steal too much of his thunder. So Lee, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Brent. So as Brent said, my name's Lee Mayberry. I've spent the last 25 plus years in the dietary supplement, food, and pet space. I did a total of over 20 years in the Whole Foods market chain of companies, most of them the last about 15 at Whole Foods Market before joining the Kradle team. Like Brent, I have a couple of rescue dogs. Mine happen to be, both of mine are border Aussies, so very smart, but obviously very active dogs. So I too use Kradle products. We like to say that one of the things we do with our products is we would never launch a product that we weren't comfortable recommending to family and friends. So I am, as Brent said, obsessed with the regulatory and quality side of the equation, sourcing the best vendors of raw material and the best co-manufacturers we can find. So hopefully we can answer some of your questions today. That's the whole goal, is for us to respond to the questions or issues you have about CBD and how that works with your dog. And we'll kind of go from there, I guess.
Excellent. Well, let's stop sharing this opening slide so that everybody can kind of see our faces. And without too much ado, we'll just jump right into it. I have some guided questions here that we will go through, but please, if you have any questions that you want specifically answered, please enter them into the comments. Our team will get them to me so that we can talk about the things that you all want to talk about relative to CBD and your dogs. But let's start, Lee, with just kind of the most basic question. I know there's a number of people on here that have varying levels of familiarity with CBD, but let's just start with, what is CBD? And then where does it come from? And then, of course, we have to broach the topic of how, in what way is it related to marijuana or cannabis?
Great. So yeah, there's a bucket of questions in there, but I'll start with CBD is cannabidiol. It's one of just many cannabinoids that are found in the cannabis plant. So cannabis plants can be either marijuana or hemp. It used to be that the DEA looked at all of them together, but thanks to the Farm Bill, that kind of clarified that. So as long as there's less than 0.3% THC, then we have hemp. If you have more than 0.3% THC, even if it was grown in the exact same field right next to one another, it now magically becomes marijuana. So the rationale for that, at least on the part of the DEA and the FDA and Congress, is that as the THC levels rise, the likelihood of some sort of psychoactive effect increases as well. So CBD is, again, just one of the cannabinoids that naturally occur in cannabis. So CBD has been researched as a drug. The FDA has approved CBD as the sole molecule, as a single ingredient for certain seizure disorders in children. So when we formulated our product, we set out to find product that had both CBD and other cannabinoids. we didn't want to use just CBD isolate because we didn't think that that's the way nature intended it to be. So we view CBD as the drug side of the equation. We think CBD, as it naturally occurs with other cannabinoids and in a more holistic formulation, has the ability to help your dog deal with stress and a lot of other things. Again, the analogy I like to give people between marijuana and hemp is they're the same genus and species. A little flashback here to high school biology or botany. They're the same genus and species, but they're bred for very different purposes. So a great analogy, given that we're talking about dogs, would be a Great Dane and a Chihuahua are both the common domestic dog, but they were bred to look, act, and be very different from one another. So although there are similarities, there are also great differences.
Thanks, Lee. So you talked a little bit about CBD and its coexistence with other cannabinoids and or versus CBD on its own. I think you used the term isolate. Can you talk a little bit about how we might look at different CBD products and try and find the ones that are isolated versus the ones that are part of a bigger party?
Right. Great question. So CBD isolate, again, is just one chemical constituent. So when it's extracted out of cannabis, it's just a crystalline material, looks kind of sugar-like, like many other chemical compounds do. So one of the things that we were very obsessed with when we were trying to figure out our formulations on the front end was trying to find the right balance between the cannabinoids and try to find other ingredients that supported that were supporting characters in that cast. So I think we need to talk for just a moment about THC, if that's all right. So THC is a big issue. There are, I know from my vet and conversations with my vet and his office that they see THC overdoses. I live in Colorado where recreational marijuana is legal. And they see cases every week of dogs that have ingested edibles or otherwise ingested THC. And the problem with THC in dogs is that dogs have a magnitude more of CBD or CB1 receptors, which is where THC attaches, right? So dogs are much more sensitive to THC. So we at Kradle intentionally selected broad spectrum hemp extract, which has no detectable THC versus a full spectrum that would have THC.
Got it. So we can still see trace amounts of THC even in a full spectrum product versus broad spectrum where you're not seeing traceable. And then isolate, which is, as you said, just the single cannabinoid of CBD, right?
Correct. So CBD isolate will typically assay out in a lab analysis at 99.5% somewhere. I mean, virtually nothing tests out at 100% purity, but at very high purity. You may see broad spectrum and full spectrum products that have CBD contents in the 80 to 90% range. But again, they still have other naturally occurring components, both other cannabinoids and terpenes and other things that work, if you will, I don't know if it's the best word choice, but to sort of buffer and complement the actions of the CBD.
So I have to ask this question because we spent a minute talking about THC. Does CBD get you high, and is it legal?
So CBD does not get you high. It has no psychoactive effect. So so CBD, you're asking if it gets you high. The answer is no, and that's pretty well documented. So where confusion comes in is when people are using other extracts that have perhaps a higher THC level. And CBD right now has been vetted and approved by the FDA as a drug. So currently, under the current FDA position, CBD, the isolate, the chemical itself, which they've approved as a drug, is not permitted for additive to foods, beverages, or even dietary supplements. So we believe that a hemp extract, so when you think about just extracting all of the plant matter and refining it, that contains CBD is a different ingredient, is a different article than pure CBD isolate. So an analogy that's kind of common in the supplement space is white willow bark, which contains salicin and salicylic acid, has aspirin-like effects, right? But it's not aspirin. So when I extract something down to its purest point and it becomes a single component, at that point, FDA is oftentimes evaluating it as a drug. And that's what happened in this scenario. So the CBD isolate has been evaluated and approved as a drug with limited use. We don't typically add drugs to foods and beverages, right? So in this case, FDA said CBD isolate is not permitted for addition to foods or drugs. But CBD distillate, there's certainly some belief, and we would be people who subscribe to that a distillate that's the natural plant extract is appropriate and permitted.
Gotcha. So Lee, you touched on a topic there, and I want to, this is kind of a broader topic, but you talked about dogs' receptors to THC. Can you just talk just generally, how does CBD and how do cannabinoids interact with the body of a dog or even a human?
Right. So when you think about it, we have CB receptors in the body. So when you think about those as a lock that's open, and you think about the cannabinoids as a key that mesh into it, that's an easy way to think about it. So we have naturally occurring or endogenous cannabinoids in our body. So we have the endocannabinoid system, which is the whole system. So we have receptors, we have naturally occurring cannabinoids that lock into there. When you take a product that has CBD and other cannabinoids, what you're doing is you're bolstering the amount of cannabinoids that are in the body circulating that have the opportunity to bind with those receptors. So CB1 receptors tend to be those that are more neurological, and they tend to be linked to things like brain and musculoskeletal and mood. CB2 receptors tend to be more closely associated with things like inflammation. Both CB1 and CB2 receptors have a role in playing with immunity. So the goal is to have a significant enough level of cannabinoids that are circulating so that they can enter into this receptor key and help basically maintain balance in the body. So that's the whole goal behind supplementing with any of the cannabinoids other than THC, which is psychoactive. But you're trying to just maintain some level of balance and, in this case, calm, and to help dogs deal with, environmentally reduced or other stress.
Excellent. And I know a question that we get a lot, and I'm sure it's on the minds of a lot of people watching this, and specifically as it relates to their dogs, right? So you and I both have, our own pups, and we give our pups Kradle products. But I think one of the big questions that everybody has when they're thinking about CBD for their dog is, how do I know how much to give? And is there such a thing as too much, right? Because none of us want to make that mistake if there's a risk profile there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when we formulated, it's a great question. And it's one that I hear all the time from family and friends when I have conversations with them, right? So at Kradle, before we decided what ingredients to use, we started out and spent a lot of time evaluating the studies that had all been done on canines. We enlisted an outside expert to help us look at and evaluate those studies so that we were trying to eliminate our own bias. And we intentionally formulated our products well below, significantly below any level where there was any kind of negative effect seen. So again, and I'm just going to go back and reiterate, our goal from the beginning, and we live by it every day, is to create products that we're comfortable recommending to our family and friends and giving to our own dogs. So yes, you can give too much. You would have to give your dog a lot of CBD to see a very negative effect. Some people have reported, there's certainly some reports circulating around the industry that CBD can create gastrointestinal diarrhea and other issues. But that is really associated with the carrier oils that are typically used. We don't sell the kind of entry level everyday tinctures that you see in the market. We've formulated our products into other delivery forms that don't rely on huge amounts of that MCT or coconut oil or other things that can contribute to diarrhea.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's really good. It's really good advice. And I appreciate you kind of clarifying that. And just a little further point, because I want everybody to kind of understand this. What do those studies show us when you see high levels or perhaps overly high levels of CBD? What's happening in those dogs from those studies?
Right. So what we've seen in those studies, what's been documented, and honestly, it's the same negative impact that has been documented in the human trials, is the potential for liver toxicity. So, and typically you would flag liver toxicity by looking at liver enzymes. So again, we intentionally have formulated at a level that is well below that. And I should have mentioned too, that our products are specifically targeted at different size or weights of dogs. So our products are sized for small, medium, and large dogs. And again, we've built in a huge safety buffer. The other approach we took, and I don't know if we're ready to talk about that yet or not, Brent, is rather than just relying on the cannabinoids or CBD as the hero ingredient, we also brought into the formulas what we refer to as Botanitech, which is our patent pending blend of other botanicals and ingredients that have well documented safety profiles and use as dietary supplements in humans and pets to kind of complement the overall stress and calming effects of our products. So we're not just relying on CBD. One thing that a lot of people don't talk about in the industry, and we do pretty openly at Kradle, is not every dog is going to react the same way to a CBD product or dosage. So you need to be willing to alter the dose, whether it's higher or lower. I have a family member that's been using our medium chews on her 100-pound Great Dane mix. And in theory, anything above 50 pounds would be a large serving for us. But in this case, she's dosing at a medium and seeing fantastic results.
That's great. I was actually going to ask, what can we expect to see in our dogs as they get used to, CBD? And I think many of us, and it's worth noting because it's myself included, we tend to use CBD in moments that we know are going to have anxiousness, right? So I use CBD if I'm leaving because I know Stella's going to be upset when I leave. I live in the Southwest, so I don't suffer thunderstorms, but I have lived in the Midwest and the thunderstorms are a really big deal. So, that can come on. It can be very onset. So talk to me a little bit, Lee, about how we should think about the use of CBD either in a regimented way or in an ad hoc kind of way, and what we can expect to see when we do that.
Yeah, so oftentimes people think that there's going to be a magic moment where all of a sudden the dog is going to react. And that may be. So it may be that there are fireworks. There may be events that we can anticipate. But, there are also events that are kind of spontaneous, right? So somebody shows up at the door and pounds really loud on the door, or as opposed to events that we can anticipate, like going to the vet, going to a kennel, going to the dog park, taking a car ride. So it's incumbent on us as dog owners, as the pet parents, that we anticipate those scenarios and try to help our dogs deal with them, because as we all know, our stress will transfer to them. So if we let their stress levels escalate, the odds are ours are going to escalate as well. And if we can get a handle on those on the front end, that's the best approach. Some people prefer to give their dog, and there's certainly an amount of research that says that giving CBD consistently, or CBD containing products consistently, has a better result because it builds up those cannabinoids in the body, as opposed to just trying to treat it as a silver bullet at the last minute. Now, certainly some of our products, our melts are formulated to be a more instantaneous dissolve and result, but you actually need to tailor it to it's no different than any other than a food or a drug or any other approach you take to your dog. You need to tailor it to the unique characteristics and personality of your dog.
Terrific. So Lee, I got one here that I'm ashamed that I didn't think of because it's very relatable. So we talked a little bit about broad spectrum, full spectrum, and isolate. There's some other kind of labeling confusion, I think, in the marketplace about using other terms like hemp oil, hemp seed oil, CBD. Can you talk a little bit about, what we should be looking for and what do those kind of different things mean?
It looks like Lee may be frozen a little bit right now, Brent. So you're going to have to fill in for him.
All right. I can certainly do that. And I have another question that has come through from Marissa. So Marissa, thank you for jumping in with a question. Sounds like you have a dog that has anxiety with storms and only at night. What's the best product? Give him out when the storm is coming. Yeah, so look, as Lee was starting to say, just as we lost him, our melts product is formulated with an extra dose of CBD. And it is in a delivery mechanism, a melt that is intended to dissolve quickly. And so is intended to bring more of that kind of quick onset relief, those moments that we don't expect to see coming. The other thing you might try is just a chew a day. So our chews, the dogs really love our chews. We've gotten just tremendous feedback on the palatability on the chews. If you know the storms are coming at night, try a chew a day. Get the dog used to having some CBD in their system. One of the things that Lee was talking about is how CBD is introduced into the system as an augmentation to the naturally occurring cannabinoids in our system. With those elevated levels and a storm rolls through, one more chew may do it if they already have kind of some CBD in their system. It is important to note, and again, this goes to Lee's point on dosing, if you want to scale back the dosing, in other words, if you're saying, look, I don't want my dog to be on CBD all the time, I don't need them to be calm all the time. It is okay to just have the cannabinoids in their systems and get reintroduced at higher levels. Let me see, we got one other thing here. We were starting to talk about the difference between hemp oil, hemp seed, and CBD. So really, the things to note is that there's a lot of inconsistencies in the marketplace on labeling. In some cases, you may see the exact same product labeled both CBD and hemp. And a lot of that has to do with the ways in which people can sell things. So certain sales platforms don't allow CBD products, but they allow hemp products. So manufacturers of these products will just simply relabel the same exact product that way. We have stayed away from that. We label all of our products as CBD products intentionally because that's what we believe in, and that's what we think is the most naturally occurring way to achieve the calming results that Lee was speaking to. It is important to know specifically in hemp seed, it's really a protein. The other places a lot of people will see hemp seed is as a protein supplement. You can see it in places where you get protein shakes. You can see it occurring in protein supplements. So in a lot of ways, anything's being labeled as hemp seed or hemp seed oil is really not going to get you the same effects that you want of those cannabinoids and the way that they interact with your pet's body, because it is really just much more of a protein. I'm trying to see if we can get Lee to rejoin. I apologize for this. And by the way, for those of you who are on, thank you for being on. Drew is our producer in the background, so I know that you're hearing the voice of God occasionally, and Drew is helping me out specifically in terms of getting this through. And it looks like we got another question coming through from Alex. Alex, thank you. If we put a dog on chews in the morning and evening to help a transition, and as the dog adjusts, do you taper down versus cold turkey, then use as needed? Great question. So the short answer is there's no need to taper down. It's not, there's not going to be any adverse effects on the dog if you take them off of CBD at any point. And that's the wonderful thing about all of our ingredients being, naturally occurring ingredients that interact with your dog's naturally occurring endocannabinoid system. That's a hard word to say. It took me weeks to say, so I just call it the ECS. But if it's working with your dog's ECS, there really isn't any problem with going cold turkey. If you are using a chew in the morning and evening to help the dog transition, I would say just react to the dog. As the dog gets more comfortable, maybe go down to 1 a day or something to that effect. And if the dog has certain trigger events, as you learn about living with the animal, just as we learn about living with other people, just be prepared to reintroduce as needed, additional chews. But generally speaking, Stella gets a chew a day, beef liver chew, because she appreciates the beef liver more than she does the chicken. And like I said, if I know I'm going to be gone, I'm going to be gone for a while, I will use the melt product on her as well. Let me pause for just a second. Thank you for the question, Alex. I think we got Lee back, maybe in voice, but not in image. Lee, are you there?
I am by phone. So as we were saying earlier, it would not be COVID world if we weren't having technical difficulties. Apparently my internet went down. So I am on by phone. So I'm happy to try to respond to questions by phone.
Yeah, so Lee, I took a little bit of a shot at answering the question on hemp oil, hemp seed oil, CBD, and I talked about specifically hemp seed really being a protein and how it shows up a lot in protein supplements or protein shakes and that type of thing. But maybe you can offer a little finer point on the differences there.
Sure. It's a great ingredient. It's a source of protein. It has some omegas, some essential fatty acids. So hemp seed, powdered up, as you noted, into protein, great ingredient. We sold it for years at Whole Foods Market in a variety of products. Hemp seed can also be pressed for oil, but hemp seed oil does not contain CBD or other significant levels of cannabinoids. So it always makes me pause when I see a product that calls out its hemp seed or hemp seed oil with the assumption that that's going to have a significant effect on stress or calming in a dog. I will say, though, that omegas do have some value. Obviously, in a dog's diet, we see omegas added to a lot of dog food and other dog products. So they're great ingredients, but they are not significant calming ingredients, and they aren't going to provide any CBD or other significant cannabinoids.
Terrific. Thanks, Lee. I've got another question from Amanda. Amanda, thank you for asking this because it's a really good question and frankly one that I have some personal experience with. It says that I have one dog who manages to know anytime something's not a quote treat, regardless of the smell or taste. My question's in reference to the melts. I can't get my dog to take it or even shove it in his cheeks or tongue, so I wrap it in cheese. Does giving the food lessen the strength or results? And Lee, before I let you answer the question about lessening the strength, I just have to share with you, I love everything about Stella. She's got the biggest heart and she's such a nurturer, but she's not the brightest bulb on the tree. And her challenge with the melts is very relatable. I have tile floors and I peeled a number of them off the tile floor before doing exactly what you're doing, which is introduce it with food. So Lee, can you talk about whether or not we run any risk of lessening strength by introducing these products with food?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I am another person. My dogs do not particularly appreciate the melts as border Aussie mixes. They're not particularly food motivated. They are definitely Frisbee and tennis ball motivated, but food is not in their top 5 list. So the melts are not a big favorite of theirs. The chews they take with no problem. The toppers work great. But giving with food is not a problem. And the reason for that is, while ingesting with food may in some ways slow down the initial digestion, CBD and all the cannabinoids really uptake well with dietary fat or other fat that's present. So having a certain amount of fat along with it, whether you put it in a piece of cheese, wrap it in a piece of meat, whatever you do with it, put it with peanut butter, none of those things are going to lessen the overall amount of CBD that's taken up. Again, it may take it a little longer to get into the dog's system, but using it with food will not decrease the amount of total uptake. In fact, it may actually help.
Excellent. Excellent. And we've got a follow-up from Amanda here. It's another question about the melts. She has melts that are meant for large dogs. So our large dog sizes are anything over 50 pounds, so 51 plus pounds. And she'd like to use it on a smaller dog that's not quite 50 pounds. Is it okay if she cuts the chew in half and gives it, cuts the melt in half and gives it half? What do you think?
I'm always reluctant to try to half dose or subdose any product, whether it's a drug or one of our products. I think that certainly that's not something we would recommend. We certainly have tried to dose the products appropriately. I understand that if you have more than one dog, you may be trying to buy one product that you can use across both. But that's, we've very intentionally listed the dosage levels on the products. So while that's something that I understand the desire to do it, we probably wouldn't directly recommend that.